Hello everyone and welcome to the story. The Whispering Pines. Let us now begin. Daniel Mathis wasn't the type to seek adventure. At 42, he preferred routine, morning coffee, work, the gym on Thursdays, dinner, and an episode or two of whatever series had caught his attention. But life has a funny way of nudging us. After the passing of his father, a man who had loved the outdoors and spent countless weekends camping, Daniel found himself longing for something undefined. Maybe it was connection. Maybe escape. Maybe grief. So on a cool Friday afternoon in October, he drove 3 hours north into the mountains of Pine Hollow National Forest. With a backpack, a tent, some food, and his late father's weathered compass, he hiked deeper than most campers would bother. The forest welcomed him quietly. Leaves whispered under his boots, birds murmured in the high branches, and the wind rustled like distant applause. He found a flat patch near a stream, set up camp, and by dusk, he was sitting beside a small crackling fire, the orange light flickering against the trunks of ancient pine. He ate in silence, just a can of chili and a granola bar, and leaned back against a log, gazing upward. The sky turned from blue to deep violet to black, pinpricked by cold stars. The forest at night felt immense, like the world had doubled in size. He should have been afraid, but he wasn't. At least not yet. Around 10 p.m., the forest changed. The breeze died completely. The fire's smoke curled straight upward into the still air. The normal night chorus, crickets, frogs, the occasional owl, vanished, as if someone had turned the forest off. Daniel sat up. Listened. Nothing. That kind of silence felt unnatural, like being underwater. Even the stream nearby, once burbling and cheerful, seemed quieter. Probably a predator nearby, Daniel muttered aloud, trying to reassure himself. Fox. Coyote. But something about the quiet pressed in. He tossed another log on the fire, its flames rising high, throwing long shadows behind the trees. The sudden warmth should have comforted him. Instead, he felt watched. Turning slowly, he scanned the tree line. Nothing. Just darkness between pines. He shook his head. Don't go scaring yourself. And then he heard it. A whisper. So faint he wasn't sure it had been real. It came from the left, where the trees grew closer together. A dry, breathy sound. Not words. Just presence. He stood, heart thudding. The fire popped behind him. Hello, he called out. Is someone there? Silence. He waited, straining his ears. Then came another whisper. This time from the right. He turned quickly. Who's there? This is private property. I have a permit. Still nothing. His rational mind told him it was wind. Trees. His imagination poking at him like a cruel sibling. But the primal part, the old, inherited fear from some distant ancestor, was alert now. Daniel grabbed the flashlight from his pack and aimed it into the forest. The beam caught nothing but trunks and underbrush. No eyes. No movement. Until the whisper came again, right behind him. He spun so fast he nearly dropped the light. The fire danced, alone. No one there. Okay, he said aloud, voice shaking. You're tired. That's all. He forced himself to sit again, closer to the fire now. He fed it another log and kept the flashlight beside him. He even laughed once, sharp and short, trying to shake it off. Time passed. Then he noticed something peculiar. The trees. They were wrong. Or rather, one was wrong. About 50 feet away, a pine stood bent unnaturally, its trunk twisted slightly at the base, like someone had grabbed and wrung it. He didn't remember that earlier. In fact, he was sure he'd looked in that direction before and seen nothing but straight, proud trunks. His father's compass lay beside him. On impulse, he picked it up. The needle spun once, twice, then settled, off north. Not just slightly, but at a crooked angle. What the hell? He tapped the glass. The needle didn't move. Then the whisper came again, and this time, it was unmistakably his name. Daniel. So soft it might have been imagined. But it wasn't. The compass trembled in his hand. He stood again. Shouted, "Who are you?" No answer. Then, movement. Not human. Something low, moving through the underbrush to his left. Not fast. Not loud. But deliberate. Twigs snapping. A shuffling sound, too heavy for a raccoon, too smooth for a deer. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The flashlight beam shook in his hand as he swung it toward the noise. Again, nothing. Only trees, rocks, the dark. He thought for a moment about getting into the tent, zipping it closed like a child hiding under covers. But that would only make things worse, out of sight, yes, but not out of reach. Instead, he stepped back toward the fire. Fire was safety. Fire was human. He squatted down and added the last 2 logs from his pile, watching the sparks leap like fireflies. The light bounced further now, pushing back some of the darkness. But not all. That same bent tree loomed at the edge of the clearing. Daniel's mind raced. Maybe it was a trick of the shadows. A dead tree. Lightning damage. Maybe he was just tired, his body trying to cope with loneliness and grief. But then he saw it. A figure. Just for a second, behind the twisted pine. Tall, too thin, motionless. Gone the moment he blinked. He didn't scream, but his heart lurched like it wanted to leap out of his chest. The compass in his hand cracked. The glass face spiderwebbed suddenly, the needle spinning wildly, then stopping dead, pointing straight at the twisted tree. That's when he noticed it wasn't just twisted, it was changing. Slowly. Growing darker. The bark warping, bending like softened wax. He squinted. No, not a tree. Not entirely. Something was standing there, shaped like a tree but breathing. Subtle movement in the torso, a rise and fall. A stretch in the limbs that were just a little too long, the fingers branch-like and motionless. His father had told him stories, once. Around their backyard fire pit. Old forest legends. About things that moved in places too deep for sunlight. Guardians, watchers, spirits, or worse. Entities older than men. He'd laughed then. Now he wasn't laughing. Daniel slowly packed his bag. He left the tent. Left the broken compass. Only what he could carry easily. He didn't take his eyes off the tree being, if that's what it was, afraid it would move the moment he turned. The fire was dying. Whatever it was, it didn't cross into the light. He took 1 step back. 2. Then turned and ran. Branches lashed at his arms. His flashlight beam bounced wildly. He didn't care about the path, only that he was going away. He didn't stop until his legs ached, lungs burning, the firelight long behind him. But the forest was darker here. Even quieter. Then the whisper came again. From ahead. Daniel. He froze. That wasn't possible. He turned the flashlight around, ready to go back the way he came, but now the trees looked wrong. Off. As though they'd shifted behind his back, rearranged themselves. There were no footprints. No path. Only trees. He was lost. He fought the urge to panic. Focus. You trained for this. Sort of. He climbed a small ridge and found a clearing beyond. There, in the moonlight, stood an old fire pit. A ring of stones. Rusted beer can. Someone had camped here long ago. As Daniel stepped into the clearing, the sounds returned. Crickets. An owl hooted nearby. The stream, distant, was audible again. The oppressive silence was gone. He dropped to his knees and exhaled hard, as though he'd surfaced from deep water. For the first time that night, the forest felt normal. Still wild. Still vast. But natural. He didn't sleep. Instead, he sat near the old fire pit, facing the woods, waiting for the sun. Dawn arrived slowly, but when it did, it was beautiful. Gold spilled through the trees, warming his skin. Daniel found his way back to his original camp by mid-morning. Nothing was touched. Tent unzipped. Ashes cold. The twisted tree was gone. Or maybe it had never been there at all. He packed everything, walked back to the trailhead, and drove home. The entire ride, he said nothing. Didn't play music. Didn't think about work. Just kept hearing the whisper. Seeing the wrongness of the trees. Feeling the needle spin. When he got home, he opened a drawer and placed the broken compass inside. Next to it, he left a note. Pine Hollow. Don't go alone. If the forest goes silent, leave. And never follow the whisper. He never went back. But sometimes, at night, when the wind is just right, Daniel swears he hears his name carried softly through the trees. And he listens. But he never answers. A week passed. Then 2. Daniel tried to return to normal life. The world kept moving, emails, grocery runs, meaningless small talk with neighbors, but he didn't move with it. He felt like he was watching life from behind glass. He slept in short bursts, dreams thick with fog and pine needles. Every morning, he woke with the taste of cold ash in his mouth and the sensation of dirt under his fingernails. Sometimes, he found twigs in his bed. Once, a spiral-shaped bruise had bloomed on his shoulder overnight. He told no one. But the forest hadn't let him go. One night, he was jolted awake by the sound of wind. But when he looked outside, the trees in his backyard were still. Motionless. The sound came from inside the house. A long, sighing exhale, like wind through branches. Then a whisper. Closer now. Daniel. He stood frozen in the hallway, barefoot, heart punching against his ribs. The sound wasn't just in his ears, it was inside his head. Familiar and foreign. Calling not with menace, but invitation. The same way his father had once called him from the woods when he was a boy, warm and knowing. He checked every room. Nothing. But on his kitchen counter, laid out as though placed with care, was the broken compass. It had been locked in a drawer. Now its cracked needle pointed toward the sliding glass door, and beyond that, the trees. Daniel didn't leave the house the next day. Or the next. He started reading. Books on forest mythology. Folklore from native tribes who'd once lived near Pine Hollow. Stories of Wendigos, skinwalkers, the tree men. Names too old to trace. Some said the forest held guardians. Others warned of tricksters who lured souls into the deep woods, where time fractured and reality thinned. What frightened Daniel most was how many of the legends began the same way. The silence came first. Then the dreams returned, clearer this time. He stood in the clearing again, beneath a sky that looked too wide. But instead of firelight, he held a lantern. One that swayed on its own. And around him, shapes gathered in the dark. Not hostile. Just waiting. He always woke up before they spoke. 3 weeks later, he snapped. He was walking through the local grocery store, pushing a cart full of corn soup and oatmeal, when a girl, maybe 6 or 7, suddenly stepped in front of him. She had pale skin, long black hair, and wide, unblinking eyes. "Don't go back," she said softly. Daniel blinked. "What?" "Don't go where it's quiet," she said again. "Or you'll stay." Then she turned and walked away, disappearing behind a row of cereal boxes. He abandoned his cart and left. That night, he packed again. Not out of curiosity. Out of necessity. He had to know what the forest wanted. What it meant. Why it had followed him home. The broken compass lay in his jacket pocket, no longer pointing anywhere. But he knew the way. The trailhead greeted him like an old friend. Cool air. Early dusk. The hush of leaves underfoot. Daniel hiked deep into Pine Hollow. No map. No tent this time. Only a lantern. He walked until night fell, until the stars blinked open above him. And then, just like before, the silence came. But this time, he didn't run. He stopped. Turned off the lantern. And listened. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, the whisper returned, not far, not faint. Not calling his name this time. Just saying, "Welcome back." The twisted tree was there again. Exactly where it had been before. Its silhouette darker than the others, impossibly still. And beside it, someone stepped forward. A man. Older, with a beard and a red flannel jacket. It was nearly 6 months after Daniel Mathis disappeared when Claire Forrester first heard his name. She was a freelance journalist, covering local human interest stories in the Pacific Northwest. The kind of articles buried on page 6, seasonal festivals, missing cats, quirky retirees with interesting hobbies. Then one rainy afternoon, she met a park ranger named Jonah Reed, who mentioned something strange. "You ever heard of Pine Hollow?" he asked. Claire had. Beautiful place. Dense forest, hiking trails, small but serene lake. She'd been there as a kid. Jonah leaned across the table of the diner and lowered his voice. "We had a guy vanish out there. October. Permit was legit. Came alone. Never left." "Okay," Claire said, writing that down. "So, search and rescue." "Oh, we searched. Dogs. Helicopters." He'd gone off trail, sure, but not far. And then, he trailed off, stirring his coffee. We found his site, but no footprints. No gear. Just a circle of stones and a cracked compass. Like something set it up to look like he'd just gone for a walk. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Spooky." Jonah nodded. "Here's the thing though," he added. "We get hikers sometimes saying they've seen him." Claire paused her recorder. "What?" "Yeah. A man. Lantern in hand. Looks like a photo we had. Doesn't talk. Just watches. And then he's gone. Same spot, every time. Near the old ridge." Claire thought about it for a long time before going back to her car. She didn't usually chase ghost stories. But something about this one clung to her. She started digging. Daniel Mathis. Software engineer. Lived alone. No partner. No kids. Estranged from his sister, according to an old obituary for their father. Quiet life. Clean record. The last credit card charge, fuel, a granola bar, and matches. Then nothing. No sightings. No withdrawals. His car had been found locked at the trailhead, keys tucked under the seat. Claire tracked down the sister, Rachel Mathis. She lived in Eugene and agreed to meet. Did Daniel ever talk about strange things? Claire asked during their interview. Rachel blinked slowly. "You mean like ghosts? Or voices? Forests, compasses?" Rachel stiffened. "He called me the night before he went out there. Said he needed to see something again. I asked him what. He said, I think it saw me first. Then he hung up." Claire felt a chill trace her spine. A week later, Claire drove out to Pine Hollow. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. The forest was still beautiful, lush green, silver mist between the trees. Birds called in the distance. The trail was well marked, and for a while, the hike was peaceful. But as she got closer to the old ridge, things changed. The sound changed. The same way Jonah had described. Crickets faded. Wind died. The air felt dense, full of held breath. Claire stood very still. No camera. No recorder. Just her notebook, a pen, and a rising tension in her chest. She walked carefully toward the clearing. And there it was. A lantern, hanging from a low branch, swaying slowly. And beside it, standing in the hush of the woods, Daniel. He looked intact. Human. Eyes dim like an old photograph. He didn't move. Just watched her. Claire stepped forward, heart hammering. Daniel, she whispered. He blinked once. Then, in a voice that sounded like dry leaves. Do you hear it? Claire's knees went weak. What? He tilted his head. The silence. It's not empty. It's listening. The wind rushed back in, abrupt and cold. The birds screamed from every direction. The lantern fell from the tree, hitting the ground with a dull clatter. When Claire looked up, Daniel was gone. 2 days later, Claire sat in her apartment, her windows locked, the forest still in her lungs. She hadn't told anyone what happened yet. Not even Rachel. Because deep in her notebook, scribbled during the silence, she'd written something she didn't remember writing. It wants a story. It needs to be known. That's how it spreads. Now, at night, she dreams of twisted trees and spinning needles. And sometimes, just before waking, she sees the outline of a man at the edge of her bed, holding a lantern. Waiting. Claire couldn't stay away. Not after seeing him. Not after hearing the silence. Something had changed in her. The forest had left its mark. Days passed. Then a week. She stopped answering emails. Unplugged her phone. Neighbors noticed the lights on late at night, her pacing silhouette moving through the apartment like a ghost. One morning, she woke up standing on her porch, barefoot, in her pajamas, covered in pine needles. The air smelled like moss and ash. She hadn't been dreaming. The forest was calling her again. That evening, she left a letter on her desk. Just a few words. I have to know what's waiting in the silence. If you find this, don't follow me. Not everyone gets to come back. She drove into the fading dusk, back to Pine Hollow. She didn't bring a camera. Only her notebook. She followed the same path, over the ridge, into the clearing. The lantern was there, glowing faintly. Daniel stood beside it. So did others now. Half-seen shapes. Men. Women. Their eyes calm. Faces silent. Not trapped, but changed. Claire took a breath. The last breath she would take as herself. Then she stepped into the clearing. The silence rushed in like a wave. And the forest closed behind her. No one ever found Claire's body. But weeks later, hikers reported something strange. On the ridge trail, near dusk, they saw a woman with a notebook in her hands, standing beside a man with a lantern. Neither spoke. They just watched. And when someone got too close, the forest went quiet. Completely, unnaturally silent. And the hiker turned back, feeling as though they'd just narrowly been forgotten. The end. Or just the beginning. For someone else. If you hear your name whispered in the woods, don't turn around. Some stories don't want to be told. They want to be lived.